Hello and welcome to Build Your Best Brand. It's a free monthly virtual education series sponsored by my company, Embellished Brands. My name is Jamie Wright, and I am the founder and CEO of Embellished Brands. I work with small business owners and nonprofit leaders to help them build impactful brands. I'm so excited that you are here today. So this month's topic is 6 essential brand elements that are going to help you build your best brand. See what I did there? Let's just dive right on in, okay? So small business owners and nonprofit leaders, we're often so focused on serving our customers or community or just running the organization, making all the decisions that sometimes we just skip over branding basics. We might put them on the back burner. We might maybe delegate them to somebody else or simply forget about them altogether. And I am here to tell you that not having our essential brand elements in place can lead to slow growth, unmet goals, and a confused audience. It may not initially seem like that, but I can almost guarantee that at some point in your organization's future, you might get to a point where you just feel like something isn't quite working and you can't put your finger on it. And that's where, if we were to have a conversation, I would probably say, let's talk about your brand a little bit more. So let's go ahead and dive into these essential brand elements that will help you build your best brand. But first, let's define brand. When you think of branding, you probably think of visual components like your logo and colors and typefaces. However, your best brand is more than just a pretty logo, just like we are more than just a pretty face, right? An authentic and successful brand has got to have a few of these elements we'll talk about shortly that will help you to truly connect with your target audience. And that really is the key. You've got to connect with the people who you are either serving as customers, where they are paying you money, or the people, if you're a nonprofit leader, that you are connecting to serve, as well as those people you want to connect to who are going to donate to your organization to help provide that funding that you need to operate. So this is why we are discussing this today. These elements are often overlooked, but really critical to ensuring that the people who need to know about you and know exactly who you are. So, brand essential number one, concise mission, vision, and values. Really what this means is not to sound really technical or really professional or anything, but really what these items do is create a framework for your organization and for you as a leader from where all of the other management decisions can be based, not just decisions about marketing or branding. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But first, before we dive into how this works, I want to talk a little bit more about what these are. Um, Really, they are a mission statement is a short summary that shares why your organization exists. And this is true for businesses and nonprofits as well. If you are a small business and you do not have a mission statement, I highly encourage you to create one because these mission statements often act as like a North Star, if you will, right? That guiding point that helps us stay on track as we are on the journey of managing our respective organizations. So a mission statement is not just for nonprofits, it's crucial for businesses as well. So if you don't have one, I highly encourage you to create one. A vision statement defines what goals or outcomes your business or nonprofit hopes to achieve in the future. So your mission statement is kind of like why you're doing what you're doing. And then the vision statement is we're doing this because we want to see this bigger thing happen. And what is that bigger thing? That's your vision. That's your kind of overarching why, so to speak. Brand values are morals, principles, and ethics that shape your organization's culture internally, and it helps craft your mission and vision statements too. But these values also are helpful externally because it helps connect you with your audience that resonates with those same values. Okay. And if you think about how you interact with brands that you love, you probably, if I could put some money on it, you probably share the same values or similar values, maybe not exactly the same. And then so the values would be one thing that you connect on, and then you might love the why of their organization, and then even further, the vision, what they're setting out to accomplish. You might resonate with that as well. So all of these particular elements are really just guiding principles, but also pieces that allow you to create connection points with your audience. So altogether, they function as a set of guiding principles. And as I mentioned in introducing this particular topic, it can help you make decisions. So here's an example of one. Um, as a leader in your organization, you might have to make a management decision, such as, finding a new software that your company or your nonprofit will use. So you might ask yourself, does this software support our value of providing an excellent customer experience? And so you would, with that value, you would then look at the benefits of that particular software system. You would look at the price of that software system. You would look at maybe the level of customer support that would be provided by that software company, and examine if each of those things will all help you meet your goal or your value of providing an excellent customer experience. And if anything falls short and you feel like that would not provide a customer service experience that is of value for your organization, then you might say, no, this isn't going to work for us. So that is just an example of a decision that you might make using these guiding principles for your organization. And then you also want to use them to connect with your ideal target audience. And in some cases, you might have more than one. Especially for nonprofits, you likely have two at minimum. You have the people that you are serving with the services that you provide as a nonprofit. And then you have your donor audience. So the people who may not be receiving the services, but they believe in your mission and your vision and your values. So they want to financially support you to enable you to achieve those things. So just keep that in mind as we're going to talk a lot today about your target audience. And while I might use it in the singular form, it often is plural for some businesses and most nonprofits. These, the mission, vision, and values should be regularly reviewed. And if at all possible, commit them to memory, because once they are in your mind and you can recall them quickly, they're often connected with your heart, and then they become ingrained in you. And so from that place, it will be easier to make decisions because you're not like, I don't really remember what our mission statement says, or uh, gosh, I don't know, but it doesn't matter anyway. I'm just going to make a decision. If you really keep these principles close to you as a leader, they're going to be front of mind, and therefore they're going to be more helpful to you as you guide your organization. So make sure that if you don't have them, that you create these things, but then that you also are actively using them and engaging with them. Then you also want to make sure that you're using this information and sharing it with your audience, because these are, as I said earlier, great points of connection to connect with the people you want to connect with, and then really just bring them into the fabric and network of your organization and really build a community with them. And just don't underestimate how powerful it is to know and share your organizational principles. So now we're going to talk about how you could do that. So for each of the brand elements we're talking about today, I will give you some tips for how to take action in incorporating them better or doing something with them. So for this first element, here's what I suggest. Write down your values and mission and vision statements, review them, put them somewhere where you can see them frequently. So you might, if you have a planner, maybe tuck them into your planner and if it's a separate piece of paper, uh, move it to each week or month of your planner so that way you see them and review them frequently. Write it inside the cover of a journal, print it out and put it up on the wall as wall decor. If you're in an office space, this is great office decor. You can have somebody come in and put up vinyl on the wall with the letters. You can have somebody come in and paint something. Just really make sure it's front and center. And you can get as creative as you want. You could, artistically interpret these things and create some artwork that reminds you of these values or the mission, or simply make a desktop wallpaper or a phone wallpaper with the words on it so that way you will see them frequently and they will be front and center to help guide you. Okay, with that, we're already on to brand essential number 2, which is custom brand design. So there will come a time when a custom brand is necessary to allow you to stand out in a sea of competitors. But first, let's talk about some things first. So whether you DIY'd your brand or paid a designer to create something to get you started, you may find that you have outgrown your initial brand as your business or nonprofit has evolved. It's extremely common to encounter what we might call a glow up phase when your organization is established and it just simply needs to be updated. And you might and maybe feel a little bit more accurate than what you started with. So when you reach this point, engaging a professional brand designer to help you visually communicate your brand is a game changer. And I use the word investment here because it will take some money and you absolutely get what you pay for. And I say this as somebody who is a graphic designer and a website designer. I've been in this industry long enough to have seen some great examples of how you get what you pay for. So I just also want to give you a word of caution that perhaps searching for a brand designer and hiring the cheapest one might not actually get you as far down the path of building out your best brand as you think it will. So just keep that in mind. There are brand designers that they exist at all price points. So do your homework, check out their portfolios, have some conversations, understand their work style, but you definitely will be quote unquote investing in a custom brand design. And the reason why you're doing that is because it's being created just for your organization. You're not, hopefully, you shouldn't be working off of a template. And you don't want something that looks like something that someone else has and creating confusion between you and maybe a competitor. So that's why I call it an investment. It is definitely a line item in your budget. So I just want to tell you that so you're prepared and not shocked that it might cost money to do something like this. It's an investment and it's worth it. Okay. So let's be clear that your brand is not just a logo, and you've already heard me talking about this in the previous point. So here specifically, when we're talking about brand design, we are talking about the visual elements. So that is the logo. It is other graphic elements or icons. It's the typefaces or the fonts that you are using. The colors in your palette, any taglines or slogans. It also includes your mission, your vision, and your values. Okay, so there's some tangible components of your brand and also those intangible elements as well. But all of that comes together to show off the personality of your organization, which is just another word for the brand of your organization. So paying for a custom brand, like I said, is an investment, and it's one that I hope is holds you accountable to using what was designed for you by a professional. And really, it's also going to give you some high quality assets and more realistically, files. You're going to have these design files that are high quality if you're using a professional designer. So that way, when you are using these graphic elements on different items, those items themselves are going to look like they're of quality and not cheap because the graphics look cheap, if that makes sense. So having a professional designer who knows what they're doing, knows how to create high quality, high resolution artwork for you, that's going to also help you as you use those things to build and show off a quality brand as well. And you can do things like you'll be able to use these elements in marketing materials, like your make packaging if you're a business, brochures, social media graphics, your website, email, marketing headers, even team T-shirts and name tags, all of that kind of stuff. That's where a professional creating these graphics for you and creating something that really accurately represents your organization's personality. That's why I call it an investment. You're going to get something really valuable out of it. And then once you have those things, you've got to make sure that you are using them well. And all of those pieces are going to show up in your marketing, and that is going to train your clients to recognize your brand. And that's going to boost what we call a know, like, and trust factor, KLT, know, like, trust factor. And eventually, the goal is that as you improve or increase that factor, that should translate into increased sales if you're a business, or the amount of services provided or donations received if you're a nonprofit. Okay, so it can seem daunting from a time perspective as well as a budget perspective, but it's absolutely a process that is worthwhile and you should see a return on that investment. All right, so how do we take action on this? First, it's important to ask yourself if you need to create a new brand or update your brand in any way. So ask yourself these quick questions. One, does your brand visually communicate your organization's values and mission? So the visual components should help bring that authenticity to your brand. Part of that is being able to artistically communicate the essence of your organization, the why, the what, the how, that kind of thing. Is your current brand reflective of your target audiences? So we talked about target audiences really quick. You want to make sure that they will change over time, especially as like your audience age changes as they grow up and evolve, as maybe you enter different segments of the market. You want to make sure that your brand it resonates with the people that you are trying to reach. So just your audience might change over time, and that might be the cause for you to go back and do a brand update. So just consider, do you feel like it's resonating or does it reflect the people you are trying to reach? And if not, that might be a reason to update your brand. Then you might ask yourself if your brand even just feels right in general. Sometimes, and in my experience and working with clients on their branding, they can't quite put their finger on it, but they come to me because they say, our marketing's not working, or I don't know what it is. I just don't like it, or it just doesn't feel right anymore. And that's okay. I think honestly, that's a legitimate uh, uh, it's a valid point for to make the decision to jump into a rebrand opportunity. So, as a leader of your organization, that feeling matters. That's probably your gut telling you there's something that's off here, and then you need to get it fixed. So if you answer no to any of those previous questions, then you might want to consider a brand refresh. And I use the word refresh to mean something maybe a little bit smaller. A rebrand is a word I usually use for a larger overhaul, if so to speak. So a refresh might be equivalent to, painting a wall, a feature wall in your room, just to jazz up the space a little bit. You might add some paint or some other decor just to change it up, and you love the space again once you've made those changes. So it could be changing, a typeface that's used in your logo or the color in your logo, freshening it up just a little bit, but it's really minor overall. A rebrand is going to be a major remodel, so to speak. It might be a completely different logo. Maybe you keep your logo, but everything else changes, like your brand color palette, any icons or other graphic designs, like all of that would be brand new. So just in case you hear me use those two terms, I'm not necessarily using them interchangeably. I'm using them to reference the scope of redesigning a brand. A refresh is a smaller project. A rebrand is a much larger project. If you think you are ready for a rebrand of some kind, start by looking at other brands that you love and make notes, but specifically about what you like about those brands, what you think they're doing well, what personally resonates with you. I would say be careful because you, as the leader, your opinion certainly counts. But if you are not your target audience, or if you wouldn't classify yourself as being a part of that demographic that makes up your target audience, be careful how much weight you put on your opinion. You want to design something that resonates with your target audience, not necessarily you. Okay. So just tuck that in the back of your mind because you're not selling to yourself, you're selling to other people, and they think differently than you do. So ask around your network for any recommendations of brand designers. Maybe somebody's worked with someone they love, and then you could see their results and check them out online on social media, check out their profiles or portfolios. Really, don't be afraid to ask questions, but definitely don't sit back. If you feel like your visual brand is not working for you, take action on it. But before you take action, make sure you are very clear on your business or your nonprofit mission, vision, and values so you can clearly articulate this information to your brand designer. They will need to understand this well. So you've got to be able to communicate it well so that way they can take it and then create something that communicates the essence of those things back to your audience. Okay. Okay. Brand essential number 3, a clear marketing strategy. Once you know the what, why, and who, so that's reflective of your mission, vision, and values, then you can build the when, the where, and the how. And we do that through having a clear marketing strategy. So after you've established what your organization is doing and why, and who you are seeking to serve, then you can build your marketing strategy by determining when, where, and how you are going to reach your ideal customers or desired audience. As a small business owner, you might not have a marketing plan at all, or maybe you'll only do some ad hoc marketing as your bandwidth allows. A nonprofit leader might have a similar experience, along with the pressure of securing enough money to be able to fund a marketing plan altogether, and even coming up with the strategy. So while every little bit of effort is helpful as you're able to get to it, in the long run, if you have a predetermined strategy that you can implement and track, that is the best way to go, in my opinion. If you don't have a plan that you're following and ways to measure your success, then how are you going to actually know if it's working for you? So, as the common saying goes, by failing to plan, you are planning to fail. Without a clear marketing strategy, you may be wasting valuable time, money, and resources with no significant results to show for it. And for a nonprofit that's accountable for the donor dollars that they bring in, this is an absolute no-no. We do not want to waste those resources. So a marketing strategy is going to serve as a roadmap to guide you as the leader and your team, if you have a marketing team or development team, the marketing strategy will guide you as you share about your products or your services, your mission, whatever it is, respective to your organization, and help you to grow your organization as well. A marketing plan does not have to be complicated, so we could just stick with that, just keep it simple and start small. It's as simple as identifying who your customers are, where they spend their time, how they like to communicate with brands, and how your organization can connect with them. You start small and expand as your business or your nonprofit and your resources grow. You do not need to be everywhere all at once. You will hear people tell you the opposite of that, that you should be everywhere and you should have a big budget and you should do it all at once. I'm much more of a realist. For small businesses and nonprofits, that's often not either achievable, or even if it is for a period of time, it's not a sustainable strategy. So my advice is to start small. You should pick one marketing strategy to start with, such as email marketing or maybe social media advertising. Implement it, work it, tweak it, monitor it, see how it goes. Once you're comfortable with that, add one more to the mix. Don't add a lot all at once, because you want to be able to track which of the marketing strategies you're doing, or which marketing channels you're using, and how that might be contributing to your success or failure. And then that way you know which one you need to tweak. So that's why I'm a fan of adding one at a time and tracking, so you can see more clearly which one you can tie results to. Regularly evaluate whether those marketing channels are providing a good return on your investment of not only money, but time. Keep what's working for you and change or remove what isn't bringing you the results that you want. So, how do you take action for this? Well, ask yourself these questions. Who is your target audience? And as I mentioned before, you probably have multiple segments or multiple audiences. They could be similar, but different enough where you have to consider them separately. So be sure you really understand who your audience or audiences are. And then where do they spend their time? And again, they could your different segments, if you have more than one, they could be on the same platform, or maybe they're different enough where they might prefer different platforms. So do your homework. And it's really easy to find reports and other data that will give you information about your audience. But to find that information, you have to know who your audience is first. So that's why that was question number one. And then consider, once you figure out where they are, consider how your organization can connect with them in those spaces. And what I mean by connect is more than just creating an account on that platform. We want to talk about engagement. We want to talk about different things that you can actively do. Maybe it's advertising, maybe it's doing live videos, or depending on the platform, there's going to be a lot of different ways that you can engage with your audience there. So that's what I mean by connect with them. It's more than just creating an account. Then consider what components you will need to add to your organization to effectively implement your marketing strategy. And by components, that could be everything from budget, team members, maybe you need to, maybe a staff person might need to adjust their schedule a little bit, or their work duties in order to be able to accommodate managing a marketing strategy. You might even need marketing materials like print materials, or I don't know, whatever strategy you decide to pursue, there's probably going to be some additional components that you will need to consider as well in order for that particular strategy to be effective. So brainstorm and make a list of what all of those things could be. Then what's one thing you can start doing this week? And then do it. So your answers to the previous questions could probably easily give you the answer to number 5. Just do it. the best way to make progress is just take one step forward. So that's what I encourage you to do today. So brand essential number 4 is consistent use of brand elements. Really, that's just because a lack of consistency can create confusion. Throughout your branding and marketing efforts, it's important to remain consistent in your design and overall look. This will help current and potential customers, or as we said, your target audience, to familiarize themselves with your brand. And over the long term, you'll build rapport with them because you've trained them to recognize your brand. So you may be hearing this word consistent used a lot today. And this is why we want to be consistent, because we want to train them to recognize your brand. And when they recognize your brand, that amplifies that familiarity they have, the affinity they have for your brand, and it increases that know, like, and trust factor that we talked about. In order to consistently use your brand elements, a brand guide is a tool that would be really, really helpful for this. A brand guide is a document that outlines how to use the visual elements of your brand, such as logo rules, typography, color palettes, other design elements. Again, I mentioned icons earlier, other graphic assets. You could include optional things like taglines, your brand voice or tone, messaging, other key organizational info that's just helpful for someone who's reading the document to understand your brand better. Um, this is a document that you're going to share not only with your team, but also with any contractors you might be working with or third-party vendors like printers, or you have someone who's going to design a t-shirt for you or something. You would send them your brand guide and say, read this and follow it. You'll have information, like I said, about your color, so they'll know the exact color codes that they should use for the ink on your t-shirts, right? So this is something that's not just for you internally, but it's a really important tool for anybody who's doing anything that impacts your brand. And I say rules. It sounds really rigid, and it can be, but really what it is, it's mostly guidelines. But if everyone is following the same guidelines or rules, then really what you get is a consistent application of your brand all the time. No matter who is touching it, if they're all following the same rules, then you get that consistency that we want. Now, another thing that's it's often overlooked, but I want to make sure I mention today, is the naming of your business. Anywhere that you have account names, domains, email addresses, or any other kind of links. A good rule of thumb is to follow the same naming conventions across the board when possible. There might be exceptions to this, but in most cases, you should be able to use the same or similar name anywhere your business is listed. This can be a little tricky because, just with the volume of businesses and trademarks and social media handles these days, it might be hard to get something that, is exactly your organization name, and that's okay. But what I'm saying here is whatever you choose to use, whatever naming convention you use that across the board where possible for account names, because again, consistency is what we want. So if your audience is used to seeing you in a couple of spaces with a certain account name, then if they go to different spaces, they might search for that account name. And if you don't show up that way, then they're going to miss you likely in that space. But if you happen to change it for a different platform, but if you are consistent across all platforms, then they should be able to find you wherever they're looking for you. And that's what we want. That's the goal. Okay. So here's how you can take action. If you don't have a brand guide or playbook, create one or ask your brand designer to make it. If you don't have it, you might want to reach out to your brand designer and see if they have one, and maybe you just never had the file for it. But once you have it, review it and remove anything that no longer serves your brand. We've talked about your brand being like the personality of your organization. If you think about how humans and our personalities are that we have different facets of our personality. We might grow and change and evolve over time. There are going to be some things that served us well at some point that no longer serve us well. That same idea applies to your organization as well. Just because something served you well before doesn't mean it's going to continue serving you well. Um, so that's why it's important to review your brand guide and update it as needed to make sure that whatever is in there is serving your organization well right now. If there's anything that you've been doing that you would consider a brand rule that's not in the guide, add it in. And again, just make sure that you are reviewing and updating as needed and stop doing anything that is not supported by your brand guide. Remember, this is a tool that your team, your contractors, any third-party vendors are going to be using. So if it's not in there, don't do it. Or if it's not in there and you're doing it, put it in there so that way everybody else is aware of that and they can do the same. Okay. All right. Brand essential number 5 is connection with humans. Surprise, surprise. People connect with people, not entities. So not a corporation, not necessarily. It's the people within the corporation that they connect with. So your clients want to know who they're talking to. They want to see a face to go with the name so they feel connected to whomever they are supporting. You've probably heard that saying, it's not what you know, but who you know. And it still rings true today and certainly applies when we are talking about branding and marketing. Despite being more digitally connected than ever, your audience still craves personal relationships. It is not possible to build personal relationships with every single individual that follows Instagram or TikTok or who's on your email list, but it is possible to help them get to know your organization better by showing your face as the leader, your team's faces, the people responsible for maybe a service or something that you might be featuring. Show the people and make it more personal as you're talking about these different parts of your organization, because that just helps create connections between your audience and your brand. Also, remember we talked about that know, like, and trust factor. The more you connect, the more you bump up and increase that know, like, and trust factor. Over time, that again translates into wonderful things such as sales or more money that you can raise or more people who know about the services your nonprofit provides, right? Um, think about, as a practical application of this, think about the rise of influencer marketing. It's a big strategy for many corporations because their customers want a personal, not corporate connection to the brands. And influencers are really good at providing that personal touch and that personal feeling. So that's why we see influencers all over the place now and what we call user generated content, because brands have figured out that people buy from people, people support people. People don't necessarily engage with corporations. They want to deal with another human. Okay. So think about how you can put a face to your organization or many faces. So highlight your team if you have one. And think about how you can be more intentional about including more personal information or maybe even personalizing some of your marketing. And here's what I mean by this. Being more personal, maybe you share, hey, here's a behind the scenes look. And they see humans actually working on the thing that you're now telling them about. Or you're sharing with them that, it's National Dog Lovers Day and you all brought your dogs to work and you love dogs, and then your audience, if they love dogs, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love dogs too. And that's a connection point. I said the word personalize as well. If you do email marketing, for example, it's really, really easy to personalize your emails. If you've collected the names of the people on your list, you can send an email that says, "Hey, John, we're in your inbox today because we want to tell you about this thing that we've got going on." And just the simple act of using someone's name that they've been given, it creates another personal touch and a connection point between your brand and that person. So consider there's a lot of different ways. It does not have to be complicated at all, but just consider how you can make more personal connections as you are trying to connect with your audience. However, I'm going to give you a word of caution here. Be careful not to compromise the personal security of you or your team. Use discretion when sharing personal details. You do not have to share things that are really personal. All I'm saying is just share more of people, show more people, just make little connections. And I gave you some examples of how to do that, but you do not have to do like, home tours or talk about your children or, go live from their sporting event or things like you do not have to do all of that to be more personal on your organization's branding activities, but just I guess showing them a more human side of what you're doing is what I mean by that. But just be careful about not sharing too much in the way of personal information because we never want to compromise your personal security of you or your team. All right, so how do we take action on this particular one? Well, get some new headshots. If you haven't updated your headshots recently, you might want to because if you've got an outdated one, you may not actually look like that person anymore. So get some updated headshots so they see your team as they look right now. Update brand imagery. You can take the stock photos off your website and instead use actual photos from your office or of your team members. So people are seeing the smiling faces that they'll engage with when they come into your office. Commit to creating more content featuring you and your team. Again, be careful, don't share too much, but also get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's going to take practice. You're going to maybe stumble over your words. I'm sure I've done that a few times during this teaching as well, but that's okay. That's what makes us all human. And what did we say? People connect with people. Humans connect with humans. So that's absolutely okay. Just get comfortable with that uncomfortableness and just get out there and do it. Try it. See what happens. Try different things. Some will work, some may not work for you, and that's okay, but you've got to start somewhere. All right, the last brand essential we'll talk about today is complete online business profiles. When your potential customers or clients find you online, they should be able to read important details and see consistent information everywhere your organization is listed. See that word again? Consistent. I love it. It's one of my favorite words. And if you work with me at all, you know I say this word a lot. So let's talk about online profiles. So really what we need to do is review your online profiles. So this could be like social media account profiles, or this could be online directory listing profiles. So I'm just kind of using a generic term to encompass all of that. So just anywhere that your business might be listed or have some kind of account or profile publicly, that's what you want to be reviewing and make sure that the information is up to date and complete. With the rise of social media and even the search engines for marketing, it's important to do this regularly just to make sure that the information is accurate because some companies that manage those listings, they might arbitrarily just change some information. And if like maybe your phone number gets changed to a wrong number, and you don't realize it, that's not good for your business or your nonprofit. So just make sure you're keeping tabs on it. And then if there are you know the fields that are available, make sure that as many of them as possible are filled in. Not all of those fields might apply to you, but for those that do, just make sure they're completed because what you may or may not know is all of those fields provide pieces of data. And so the more data that you provide, the more connections are made in the background for SEO purposes. So, a little tip from me to you about that. So, if you feel like it's kind of a burden to take the time to like completely fill out a profile or account page, please take the time to do it. I promise you, it'll pay more dividends than you think. Um, if there are features on a platform, try to use the feature. And I use that term generically because different, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have TikTok, you have X, you have Threads, there's all kinds of platforms and they're each unique in their own way, but they are unique intentionally because they want to create a space for people who want to stay there on that platform. So just make sure that you are tailoring your profile for that particular platform, and then whatever features are there that they're asking you to use, that you use them because they will reward you for that. Outside of social media, we want to make sure that you have claimed and verified any free online business listings that exist and where your audience might be looking for you. Um, excuse me, Google business profiles and Yelp are two examples of this. And I really want to hone in on this verify piece of what I said. It's one thing to claim an account, but oftentimes there's a verification process. And sometimes it's just a simple email address verification, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Other times there's a phone call where they want to call your business number and give a code, and then you pop back online and put the code in. Other times they're going to mail you something, and that's their way of verifying your physical address. So there might be a verification process you have to jump through. So make sure that you complete that process, or you will not be able to claim that profile. Okay. And one of the reasons why it's really important to make sure you are able to claim the profile is so that way, and I'm not saying this happens, but it happens sometimes. Um, Sometimes competitors will claim, or at least attempt to claim, the profiles of their competitors just to gain an advantage. Okay. Not saying that people do this a lot, but it could happen. So you just as a measure of protection for your organization, you just want to be the one who owns or has access to any of the profiles that belong to your organization. Let's see. And honestly, really, the whole benefit is the more places your organization can be found online, the better. It's all helpful, especially from an SEO standpoint. So that is what makes this really important. So to take action on it, review the profiles of all of your social media accounts, ensure your information fields are complete as much as you're able to, and then claim any online business listings, especially those on major platforms such as Google, Yelp, Bing, Apple Maps, etc. Um, you want to be on the major ones at a minimum, and major and minor at a maximum. I hope that didn't confuse you, but just definitely make sure, because search listings, so the maps component is really important these days. So Google, for example, will put your business listing on their maps, but sometimes, like Apple Maps, sometimes their listings are independent. So just make sure you've checked into all of them so you have all your bases covered. All right, here we are at the end. Here are the 6 essential brand elements we talked about today: concise mission, vision, and values, custom brand design, clear marketing strategy, consistent use of brand elements, connection with humans, and complete online business profiles. At every stage of business, covering your branding basics will help you craft and maintain a brand that authentically represents your mission. And once you dig into these brand elements, you may realize that you have a lot of them in place, and maybe you didn't realize it. So just hopefully this information helps you just be more aware about how you could start applying these elements to really building out your brand. And my hope is that the information presented today will help you formalize your organizational foundation, streamline your branding and marketing efforts, guide you in achieving your organizational goals, and overall help you build your best brand. So thank you so much for joining me today to learn about 6 essential brand elements I think are important for any organization, and I would love to keep in touch. You can find Embellished Brands across all social media platforms at Embellished Brands. That worked out for me. And if you're interested in joining me for a future live teaching of Build Your Best Brand, you can check out the events page on my website at embellishedbrands.com/events for more information and registration links. That'll be updated on an ongoing basis, so check back anytime. And of course, if you have any questions or want assistance in developing your organization's brand strategy, please reach out. You could do that through the website as well. Thank you again for listening to today's teaching. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I will see you next time.